One of the most iconic images in the Warhammer 40k universe is that of the Space Marine Terminator. A large, hulking, armored Space Marine weathering all sorts of firepower as it advances up the field or through the corridors of a Space Hulk, just basically taking on everything it can be thrown at it. It is the tactical dreadnought armor. It is supposed to be something that the Space Marines are able to throw at virtually anything and have this thing come out unscathed. But the question is it worthwhile on the table? What's happened to Wargamers? This is another video with my thoughts on Warhammer 40k as a game and just where it's at in the state of play and what might be able to be done in order to sort of bring it back up to the snuff and where we want it. This particular video I'm going to be focusing on the Terminator problem. Basically, what do we do with these Terminator models that we all have? Anyone who plays Space Marines inevitably has a number of these models, and everyone who plays them has also noticed that since 8th edition has rolled around, the Terminator is just nowhere near as effective or devastating as it once was. This is for a couple reasons. They are expensive models, to say the least. Usually for a unit of 5, on average, you're looking at close to, if not over 200 points, and that's before you even start factoring in any upgrades for. That is also assuming you're just looking at the basic Space Marine Terminator, so not even talking about, Grey Knights or Specialty Terminators or even the Chaos Space Marines. They are expensive. The other big problem is that whereas their 2-up armor save used to be able to basically withstand a lot of firepower under the old AP system. For those unfamiliar with it, the way armor piercing values used to function is unless you had a weapon that met the armor value that needed to be basically pierced, you always got an unmodified save. So there was none of this of modifying saves by -1, -2, -3. Basically, it was all or nothing. You needed an AP2 or AP1 in order to break through that armor and ignore the save. Basically, what that meant is that Terminators were able to weather an absolute storm of firepower. And you needed things like melta-guns, plasma guns, las cannons. Basically, you needed extremely heavy weaponry, or you need something with rending to get through it. So basically what's happened in 8th edition, though, with the way armor piercing has basically changed, where now it's always going to modify the armor value of it, you're now looking at a Terminator with a lot of things, even if it's just causing a -1 or -2 to the armor save, their 2-up armor save is nowhere near as powerful as it once was. But given that Games Workshop still seems to have a habit of pricing models based on their armor save, and they seem to overvalue the 3-up and 2-up armor save these days, especially based on the new system, that leaves the question of Terminators and, what really is their role in the game. Well, basically, I've given this much thought, and you've probably seen these discussions online as well, but I think there's a couple key factors that really should be considered for Terminator armor just to make them a little bit more viable. Now, all these thoughts basically come without modifying the existing points of Terminators. That's a whole other level of balancing that I am not nearly qualified enough to talk about. However, these are all just ideas worth considering, worth thinking about in order to make Terminators viable. So the very first one is basically taking the Terminator armor and treating it like a piece of war gear in that it will boost various stats, namely that of toughness. Right across the board, I feel that Terminator armor should be granting a +1 toughness to the Space Marine inside of it. And this is for a very specific reason. First off, it reduces how devastating small arms fire can be on it. No longer will a bolter really do a big number on it. You're not wounding it as easily with bolter fire. You're not wounding it as easily even with something like pulse rifle fire. Basically, you need strength 6 before you're starting to wound it on a 3+, which means the vast majority of firepower going at it, you're looking at either 4 or 5+ in order to wound it. So right off the bat, that improves the durability of the Terminators, simply by virtue of, you're now shrugging off a whole lot more wounds that you would otherwise be taking. You're going from being wounded on a 50% chance to being wounded on a 33% chance on average, sometimes even a little bit worse depending on what the weapon is. So that's the first one. Now, obviously, you're going to have to deal with the issue that there are some Terminators out there that do have, an extra bit of toughness. Death Guard are amongst them and whatnot. You'd have to take a look at them. But quite frankly, I think Toughness 6 Death Guard are kind of an interesting thought. But that would definitely be the strongest argument for a bit of rebalancing points-wise there. But just in general, upping that toughness is going to make them stick around on the table a little bit more. Now, on the subject of resiliency and sticking around, the other thought that comes up, and this comes up in a number of conversations, is the idea of giving the Terminator armor basically the notion that small arms are not going to be as effective. Now, something like this exists with the Thousand Suns, where basically if something has a armor-piercing value of -1, they basically ignore that. It gets treated as armor-piercing value of 0 or something along those lines. But the whole idea basically is that it should treat small arms fire, so anything with an armor-piercing value of -1, basically treat it as having no armor-piercing value. Make that 2+ save worthwhile. Make it so that it can walk through small arms fire, make it to the other side, and be a viable threat. That is a huge thing right there. And I think it's something that really needs to be considered. And again, these are things that we have mechanics for in the game already, so it's not hard to think about how to adapt them for basic Terminator armor in general. And once again, I want to stress that I'm talking about all Terminator armor in this case, not just Loyalists, but I'm talking Chaos Marine as well. The next thought that always crosses my mind when it comes to how to really deal with Terminators is the fact that they are supposed to be these walking tanks, basically in the form of a suit of armor. They used to have a rule, Relentless True Grit. Basically, the idea is they used to be able to move and fire all sorts of weaponry, heavy weapons, without any penalty. That is not the case these days. Well, I think some might have it, but generally speaking, if you're firing a heavy weapon, you're taking that -1. That is something that should not be happening with Terminator armor. Just in general, you look at these suits of armor, there should be stabilizers all over the place. They should be able to walk around, fire an assault cannon without taking any penalties to it. Fire, a plasma cannon if they have access to it. Fire any sort of heavy weapon. So, like with Grey Knight silencers or psi cannons. Basically, there's no reason why these weapons should be taking a -1 when they move. So that's another thing that I feel they really should be considered when it comes to Terminators. Being able to move and fire this weapon without any penalties. They sort of got a shot in the arm with the bolter discipline. Basically, the fact that they can benefit from the rapid fire storm bolter at any distance, regardless of movement. I think that's something that needs to be expanded upon. Introduce it to the other weapons as well. Basically, make these guys a very mobile fire platform. It just increases their flexibility so much more and increases their lethality quite a bit as well. So between, increasing their durability, making them more lethal, all of a sudden you're starting to get a unit that's a lot more worth the points that you're putting down on the table, because when they come down, they are going to be a threat. They're going to be able to look at stuff, they're going to be able to cause wounds, and they're going to be able to weather the storm in response. Now, the very last thing that I think that Terminator armor should grant, or at least be considered, I really like the idea of the armor granting a feel no pain mechanic. So once again, you're going to get into an issue with things like the Death Guard, which already have their feel no pain mechanic and disgusting and resilient. But frankly, I feel that the Terminator should grant a 6-up feel no pain mechanic. Again, this armor is supposed to be the equivalent of a walking tank in the form of a suit of armor. Give them something to make them be able to weather those things, especially the high-powered firepower. Being hit with a las cannon, yes, it's devastating, but at the same time, that's what this armor is designed for. It's designed to try and shrug off these types of wounds. So giving them a feel no pain mechanic means that even the toughest firepower is gonna not struggle to kill them, but it's not gonna be a guaranteed kill. Especially, it's one of those things that, when they used to have one wound, a feel no pain mechanic could potentially save them unless it was being doubled out and whatnot. Now that they have 2 wounds, now it just feels like, they've tried to do a little bit to making them a little bit more substantial on the table, but anything that's shooting at them that can reliably kill them is still ignoring that 2 wounds. So having a feel no pain mechanic that basically says, that plasma gun, that las cannon, sure, you're going to put some hurt on it, but there is that slight chance that it's going to be shrugged off. Again, it makes them a little bit more durable, it keeps them on the table, and it really makes your opponent think twice about what they're using to shoot at all your units. That las cannon is no longer guaranteed guaranteed to be looking at your dreadnought, your transports, your your heavy units. It's now thinking, well, you know what, it might be worth it to fire that las cannon at this unit of Terminators, which then takes some pressure off another unit. But it also means that that's not even a guaranteed thing. So they can still fire that las cannon up, but there's still a chance that it might be able to be shrugged off. Now, this last thought, this is a little bit more half-baked. It's not fully formed. It's a nice idea. I don't necessarily think it's something that needs to happen for Terminator Armour, but I think it's something worth considering. But anyway, those are just some quick thoughts on Terminator Armour, where they stand, and what might be needed to be done to sort of make them a little bit better, a little bit more effective on the field, and maybe give them some new lease on life. Because right now we're seeing less and less of them on the table. There are some places for them, but generally speaking, they're nowhere near as threatening as they once were. This wonderful, iconic unit of Warhammer 40,000 is just not seeing table play simply because it's not worth it. They die just as easily as most Marines. Their armor doesn't mean as much as they used to. They can't put out the firepower that they once did, at least not reliably. So these are just a couple ideas that can be done to try and just make Terminators more viable, make them a presence on the field, and get people using them again. So as always, leave your thoughts below. This is not meant to be gospel. I love to hear counter opinions, counter thoughts, and whatnot. Tell me you agree with me. Tell me you think I'm wrong. I just want to hear from you. So definitely comment below. And of course, if you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Your support just helps me make these videos more and more. So knowing that you guys are liking them and paying attention to them always helps for me. So thank you so much for watching and listening. And as always, happy wargaming.